Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason. I am in Ottawa, Illinois at Ottawa Avenue Cemetery, and buried here is William Dixon Boyce. Who was he? He was the founder of the Boy Scouts of America. I'm not going to be focusing on the organization itself. I mean, there's a lot of history to it, plus there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. But I'm going to be going into the man who was very selfless. He was a social reformer among many other titles, and there's a marker just right behind me. Plus we'll be visiting his grave and his statue. Well, not his statue, but I'll show you more on that. But come on and join me. I'll get started. So right here, now the statue and the grave are just up that way where we headed. And yes, here's the emblem, and that's just the rules and information about the cemetery. But this is all about William Dixon Boyce, or WD, and there's a lot to be said, and I'll try to filter it out as much as I can. Alright, W.D. Boyce was an inspirational man with many talents. Born on June 16, 1858, he became a hard-working young man, spending many long hours on his farm. As he got older, he decided he did not want to work on the farm for the rest of his life, so he decided to do something different. Going on to his teens, he became a school teacher, was also a weight checker in a coal mine. At age 20, he enrolled at the College of Wooster in Wooster, Ohio. He was smart, driven, and he knew how to make money. He moved to Chicago in 1881 and sold advertising space for a monthly magazine. There he worked hard and earned the reputation of a person who could sell anything. Boyce had an adventurous attitude. People speculated that is why he decided to pack up and move to the northwest frontier. He moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, in Canada, and started working for a financial column called The Commercial. He left Winnipeg and moved to the territory of Lisbon in December of 1882. In that same month, he started a newspaper. Newspaper was run for 3 years. It was called the Dakota Clipper. In 1885, he sold the Clipper and moved back to Chicago. And this talks more about his Chicago years, and then goes on to great family man, which he was. It says he had a family home in Michigan with about 20 horses. He taught his children how to ride horses and shoot guns before they were 6 years old. His son and 2 daughters were happy and well-behaved children. In the 1890s, the family lived in a beautiful townhouse in Chicago with a building that had stables for 6 horses and a room for various cars. 1902, they moved their permanent riverside home here in Ottawa, Illinois. And then down here, it talks about the end of his life. When his son passed away in 1928 due to issues from World War I, Boyce was broken. Lived the rest of his life as well as he could, but he never fully recovered from the loss. In May 1929, he fell ill with pneumonia, but he had lived his life to the fullest, from his beginning as a small farmer to his transformation into a successful, wealthy, well-traveled businessman. Boyce lived a life that is the epitome of the American dream. Now that kind of talks about the legend of how he started the Boy Scouts. Now, overseas, yes, the Boy Scouts were a thing. So, Boyce traveled the world often. While he was shooting and exploring in Africa, he read English newspapers about Robert Baden-Powell's Boy Scouts. He thought of it as an honorable corporation, and he planned to meet Robert Baden-Powell, the founder of the English organization. Later that year, on a business trip to London, he found himself in a somewhat troubling predicament. It happened to be a very foggy day, and he got lost. A young boy came into view and asked where he was going. Boyce replied, explaining his problem, and the boy grabbed his suitcase and showed him the way. When Boyce offered to pay the boy, he refused. He said it was his good deed of the day. Boyce was confused and asked about it. The young boy said he was a Boy Scout. Boyce had so much appreciation for this act, he went and met Robert Baden-Powell himself. He said to him, "You don't need to tell me what you've done, just tell me the mistakes you made." That statement sparked their friendship. When he came home in 1910, Boyce and many others built the organization now known as the Boy Scouts of America. Boyce also founded an organization called the Lone Scouts of America, but this paragraph talks all about that. Boyce was a millionaire, and he financed the corporation for 2 years until it was running smoothly. Now, keep in mind, it was not very profitable because it took a while for the organization to get off the ground. But he was proud of his work he had done, yet there was a minor flaw. Young boys who lived out in the country in rural towns couldn't experience this great opportunity. So W.D. Boyce started having representatives either go out to the boys or the boys sent their progress in the mail. Boyce underestimated the number of rural country boys that were interested in scouts. So in 1915, Boyce started the LSA, the Lone Scouts of America. It was later merged with the Boy Scouts in 1924. He made this program more of a Native American ranking system and called himself Chief Totem. So this talks about The title of chief was an idea from the original Boy Scouts, the Woodcraft Indians, and was one of the first organizations for boys. He offered this to boys who wanted to learn more about woodcrafting, forestry, outdoor camps, and survival. He wrote 2 manuals for this program, one of which was read by Robert Baden-Powell, who used more of that information to create his version of the organization, the Boy Scouts. The ranking in the system was more military than tribal in the Boy Scouts of England. We adopted Powell's Boy Scouts, or Baden-Powell's Boy Scouts, and the Woodcraft Indians later merged into the BSA in 1910. Ernest Thomas Seton was among the men who created Boy Scouts of America, and it was his idea to merge the Woodcraft Indians into the newer organization. The Boy Scouts of America organization is still enjoyed by many young men who work hard to better themselves every day, even now in 2020, or in this case 2022. So that's where I am, and then I'm just going to walk down that way, and then that's the statue where we're headed. I'm going to read this real quick. This Eagle Scout project is to honor W.D. Boyce and everything he has done. An Eagle Scout is the highest honor in Boy Scouts, and I dedicate my hard work to my grandfather, Richard Saar, and great-grandfather, Charles Saar. They helped put in the W.D. Boyce statue down the road, and I hope this kiosk can give their hard work some praise as well. Thank you, W.D. Boyce, for bringing scouting to America and this opportunity to honor my family. And that was by Kevin Saar in 2020. So now we're going to go up that way. And so, believe me, it's not that far of a walk. Anybody who makes a trek out here, please do so, especially Boy Scouts. That is a 9/11 memorial. Really great. Another thing Boyce wanted out of the group was he wanted to focus the scouting program on teaching self-reliance, self-confidence, citizenship, resourcefulness, patriotism, obedience, cheerfulness, courage, and courtesy in order to make men. He wanted all races and all creeds to be part of the organization, although at the time it was a majority of white people. That's a nice looking building. And that is a War of 1812 memorial in memory of the 9 soldiers buried here. Wow, very interesting. But like it says on the marker, the Boy Scouts of America was incorporated on February 8th, 1910. But in the beginning, it struggled with shortages of cash and leadership. Boyce himself personally donated $1,000 a month to keep the organization running. So this is where he turned off to see the statue and the graves. But first I'm going to see the graves real quick. And they're actually just right over here. And then in the background is the Illinois River, which of course goes from Chicago and it takes you to Peoria, LaSalle, and all the way to the Mississippi River. Not in that order, of course. But these are his family. And that is where the founder of the Boy Scouts of America is buried, right here. 1858 to June 11th, 1929. So let's see, that was 93 years ago today he passed. Wow. This video was not intentionally made. It was just 1 out of 365 days probability. And just right at the foot of the grave, I guess that's what you call it. This is a walkway that leads straight to the statue. And I'm surprised that it's not looking that way, but hey, to the river. But there is a plaque on here that says, "To William D. Boyce, publisher, explorer, humanitarian, in appreciation of his service to the boyhood of America. Inspired by the good turn of the unknown English scout, he brought scouting to the United States. Erected by the Boy Scouts of America, June 21st, 1941. Now that of course is not him or any members of his family. That is just pretty much what a scout usually looks like, dressed in uniform, and it looks like they're either on a camping trip or at a meeting, or they're just getting tools for a fire. So William did choose to be buried here in Ottawa because he considered Ottawa his adopted hometown because he had moved around so much. And plus, I mean, I'm sure it's because it's fittingly by the Illinois River. But now on June 13th, 1929, 2 days after his death, this is where they had the service, and apparently it was very there was a heavy rainstorm that day, but that did not stop people from coming here, especially lots of scouts. James West, who was the first chief executive of the Boy Scouts, gave the eulogy. Boy Scouts of America officials sent his widow a telegram that said the entire American nation owed him a debt of gratitude. So that statue, West also dedicated that plaque, so very fittingly. Now there are lots of things that happened after Boyce's death, including the 50th anniversary of the Boy Scouts organization in 1960. The Illinois governor at the time, William Stratton, dedicated the road that led to this cemetery, which I drove on, as Boyce Memorial Drive. Now the 75th anniversary pilgrimage in Ottawa, 2,500 scouts and were here in 1985, and it was attended by his last surviving child, Virginia, and the Union League of Chicago, which named Boyce its first Hall of Fame member. And in 1997, a scouting museum here in Ottawa was dedicated. And in fact, there's a thing here on that says, visit the Ottawa Scouting Museum at Fulton, Washington Streets. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked. I hope you found this one very fascinating, because not very much is known about the founder of the Boy Scouts unless you are an actual Boy Scout. So if you were a Boy Scout, let me know in the comments, and let me know how this man's legacy has improved your lives. So I am here in Ottawa Avenue Cemetery in Ottawa, Illinois. Jason, signing off.